Hello everyone and welcome to the game a lot of you have requested. It's from the FIDE Grand Prix, Andrey Esipenko versus Hikaru Nakamura, and yes, the news have already most probably reached you. Hikaru Nakamura has qualified for the 2022 FIDE Candidates Tournament alongside Richard Rapport, as Hikaru, by winning his group in the FIDE Grand Prix, prevented anyone else from really overtaking Rapport, who is on 20 points in the two Grand Prix that he played. So the two of them are qualified. And this is basically the game that allowed Hikaru to do so. If you remember in the previous video where Esipenko was playing against Levon, we said that Esipenko was preparing the white pieces for Hikaru, and then he had basically the black pieces against Levon. He mixed up who he was playing against, so now he will get to play his actual preparation that he prepared in the game versus Levon. It's a very interesting game. Let's check it out, and then we're gonna discuss a little bit more about what is happening in the candidates. So here we have e4 by Esipenko, e5 and the bishop to c4. He prepared the bishop's opening. We have knight to f6, d3, and now knight to c6. We have knight to c3 and now knight to a5. This is the standard way of treating this line. We go after the light square bishop, queen to f3, and now knight captures on c4, d captures and d6. So white gives up the bishop pair very early on, and he even doubles his own pawns. He has a double c-pawn now and no bishop pair, but he gets pretty much the control over the d5 square for the rest of the game. So knight g to e2, we have bishop to e6 attacking the pawn, and Esipenko defends it. We have b3, bishop to e7, and both players castle. So castles, and now there is a game where rook to d1 was played, but here we have a4 by Esipenko, and it is now as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. So Hikaru goes knight to d7, makes room for the f5 pawn to be pushed. Also, the knight might be coming to c5. It's a nice square. We have a5 and now a6, preventing white from creating some long-term weaknesses with pawn push to a6. Knight to g3, going after that f5 square, and now bishop to g5. Hikaru wants to trade bishops and get his queen into the game. So knight to f5, and now bishop captures on c1. So this is all fine. This is nothing out of the ordinary here. Rook captures here, and now first g6, we kick away the knight from the f5 square, and now knight back to e3. If you go knight to h6, then after king h8, your knight isn't really enjoying himself there. It's a very active square, but black will play f5, and it could be a little bit tricky to get it out of there. So instead, knight back to e3, and now c6. As the rook moved from the a1 square, we now grab control of the center, or rather try to grab control of the center. We will prepare the d5 push, but at least now we are attacking the a5 pawn. So for the moment, Esipenko has to bring the rook back, rook to a1 to defend the a5 pawn, queen to e7, and now queen to d1. We will prepare queen to d2, rook to d1 to stop black from pushing d5. So rook a to d8, we have queen to d2, and knight to f6 now. And this knight to f6 is very tricky by Hikaru. If white just continues with rook to d1, Hikaru will play knight h5, and then he will gain control over the f4 square, and white is never playing pawn to f4, or rather rook a to d1 probably, as white will want to play f4 at some point. So here, Esipenko, without allowing Hikaru to stop this, pushes f4 right away. E captures on f4, rook captures, and now knight to h5, clearing the floor for the queen. Rook to f3, and now queen to g5. We have rook a to f1 now, and now comes queen captures on a5, and this is a very interesting pawn sacrifice. Esipenko wants to mount an attack and to defeat Hikaru, and it's not a bad move. It's a great move, and it's a very risky move and a very complicated one, as you'll see. So queen captures on a5. Hikaru doesn't have to grab the pawn, but he accepts the challenge, and now g4, forcing the knight to go back. Knight to g7, and now knight to f5. This was the idea, and the thing is, it's actually okay for Hikaru to grab this knight, but it's almost impossible to calculate. There's simply so much stuff on the board. But to give you an example, after g captures, you have to play bishop to c8. This is how you prevent white from just crushing you. It looks very dangerous. I mean, if f6 comes, something like queen g5, rook can come to g3, so it doesn't really seem like you can defend this, but whatever white tries, let's say queen h5, we just play f6. We stop the advancement of the f-pawn, and after, let's say, rook g3, we play rook to f7. After rook to f2, preparing to double up here on the g file, we play rook e8. And after white goes for this attack, we can play rook to e7, and we hold this position. It looks ugly, and it looks incredibly unpleasant to play, but you know, if you really wanted to do it, if there was no other way, then you could do it. Hikaru declines the sacrifice. He plays queen to e5, and now Esipenko goes knight to h6 with check, king to h8, and now knight to d5. He offers another knight, well, can Hikaru grab this one? If you play c captures, we're gonna play e captures on d5, and now you have to play bishop captures on d5. Okay, maybe not have to, but it is the strongest move for black. And after c captures f5, and this is how you survive the attack. So it is possible, but again, seems like you're just giving white too much, and you're playing right into what white wants. So here Hikaru plays g5, and now what do you play here? Well, queen to f2, or you could try maybe some c3, b4 ideas on the queen side. That always works. But here we have queen to f2, now attacking the f7 pawn 4 times, and now Hikaru pushes f5. We have g captures on f5, bishop captures on d5 now, e captures on d5, and knight to h5. Preparing to put the knight on f4, and then you're going to block this triple battery white created on the f-file. Rook to e1, chasing away the queen, queen to g7, and now, only now, knight to g4. Now you are hoping to get that f6 move in. So knight to f4, cutting off the queen and rook's defense of the pawn, and now f6. Luckily, the knight still controls the f6 pawn, so you cannot capture it. Queen to d7, you really want the queen here, because if you allow rook to e7, could be very unpleasant. At least now you are threatening queen captures on g4. So how can Esipenko react to this? Well, he could defend it with h3. Then we go something like rook d to e8, and then we trade. For example, captures, the game goes on. But Esipenko wants more, and again, he plays rook captures on f4. And okay, g captures on f4, it's a forced move, queen captures, and now rook d to e8 by Hikaru. He offers a trade of rooks, and there really isn't anything for Andrey here, but it's again extremely complicated, and I will show it because Andrey declined the rook trade. He played rook to f1. I will just show briefly what happens after rook captures on e8. The thing is, you cannot play rook captures, because then we play f7 and white just wins. If rook to f8, we play queen to f6 checkmate. So capturing with the rook would not be very advisable, but after queen captures on e8, it's still very much a game. Queen captures on d6, we're gonna play rook to g8, and yes, you are not saving this knight, h5 is coming, but after h3, h5, we can play queen to e6. You offer a queen trade, and after h captures on g4, you play f7. That's how you play this. Queen captures on e6, pawn captures, and now g captures on h3, opening up a discovery and trying to give up a rook, but of course white is not interested in that. White wants to create two connected pass pawns, or rather they are two connected pass pawns now, but they want white will want to have both of them on the 7th rank, and then of course it's a winning position for white. So here king h2, king g7, and now you kind of have to capture because there's no other way. King to f8 is coming. So here we're going to play captures, and after king captures on h3, and now it's a draw because black king will capture this pawn. King g3, king f6, we're going to go here, captures, and this is now a dead draw. So this is basically what Hikaru is offering with rook to e8, but Esipenko again wants more. Rook to f1, and now Hikaru plays queen to f7. And interestingly, yes, Esipenko does have very active play. The knight is very dangerous here, but as long as this pawn is on f6 and Hikaru doesn't allow him to push it to f7, you will not be able to control this diagonal, and you will not be able to harass the black king. So here Hikaru is just much better. King h1, now comes queen to g6. Even though just capturing on d5 as Esipenko allows it is fine again, but Hikaru not taking any chances. Queen to g6, and now we have rook to g1. Some complicated counterplay with c5 does exist, but after rook to g1, there's simply no good move for white, regardless pretty much of what Hikaru plays. Hikaru can just set up even further blockade with rook to f7. He can capture, but he can also just play h5, and it looks scary because you are kind of forcing this rook to open up on the queen, but there's really nothing white can play here. Knight to e3 was played. Here Hikaru just played rook captures on f6, and he was in this position on move 38 that Andrey Esipenko resigned the game, and there is nothing more to be done here, and Hikaru Nakamura qualified for the candidates tournament. So here you resign as you don't really have anything. If you trade queens, then black is just much better. If you try to keep queens on the board, black can always just force a queen trade, and it's not going to be possible to play this. If you go knight f1, we can just play rook e1 or rook here. Pretty much anything just wins. We can even capture on d5. C captures. Now play rook here or rook here. If the knight moves, we happily trade. If the rook moves, we just win the game on the spot. So nothing for Esipenko here. So he did prepare something very interesting, as you've seen, for Hikaru, but it just wasn't enough. And he was really trying to win this. Hikaru didn't take much risks, and there were a couple of instances where Esipenko could have just gone for the draw, but he really wanted to win this game, and in the end he lost it, and Hikaru gets a spot in the next candidates tournament. And as no one else will be able to catch up to Rapport, as most of the people with a lot of points were in Hikaru's group, that means Richard Rapport and Hikaru Nakamura have qualified for the candidates tournament. Now, what does this mean for the entire tournament? Do we have all the participants? Well, no, we still have to wait for Ding. Ding is still playing. He still needs to have enough classical games played in order to be qualified for the classical event, that is the candidates tournament. But he's doing great. Today I think he already won his 4th classical game in a row, and he is not just winning the games, but he's also increasing his classical rating. He's already I think he overtook Firuja now as the on the live rating list. I could be wrong, but I think if not, then he is extremely close. I think he's like 2804 already, and he was 2799 when he started his ascent. So yeah, this is extremely exciting. We know all the participants now except for Ding, and we'll see what Ding will do. Most likely he will be able to qualify, but I mean, you can never be certain. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, Esipenko was I mean, he was extremely prepared. You've seen he had everything, but he really wanted to win this game, and that's why he lost it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank David Kimura, Mehmet Zonmes, OpenSea Smokey Dule, Tyler Rechko, and Gisin Bernard for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the FIDE Grand Prix until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.